Hi there, Martin Cobbled here from Dealey Pest Control. We're professional grain store sprayers. We do a lot of pest control for people on farms, especially pre-harvest, spraying out their grain stores to make sure that they're bug-free before a nice new crop goes in there. This video was recorded in 2018. That date is important because this video come 2019 may well be out of date because each of these products here has to be re-registered every so often. It costs a lot of money if the market isn't there, and people just won't re-register them and they will fall out of action. So these are the ones that we've got left to us today in 2018. We've got two different kinds of chemicals. We've got some on the left-hand side here. These are the pyrethroids. This one's not, that's an additive. I'll tell you about that later if you're lucky. And these ones are the organophosphates. There's one here that you might recognise. It's the Actelic 50EC. This is an old school organophosphate, and it's one that was used very prevalently in the 90s, which was really the go-to chemical. When I first started doing pest control, this was pretty much all we used. Then one fateful day, a load of biochemists came out to see us. They were doing urine tests on people that used this stuff intensively, and they did it for 1 week while we were using it, 1 week after we were using it, and it turned out there was almost no drop-off to the chemical that we'd absorbed into our systems, so it was considered too persistent to be used by manual operators. So this one is for remote use only, and it's to spray directly onto grain only. That's the reason we have it there, is really just to say don't use it. There's a lot of people with some of this still in their stores, and just don't use it on an empty grain store. It's no longer registered and is not considered safe. Okay, so I'm going to put this down here just so that we avoid any sort of confusion. So we're only left with two organophosphates here. Now, the cool thing about organophosphates is it works on enzymes in nervous systems. Okay, all of these are nerve agents. This one is what you call an axonic excitotoxin. This one, anticholinesterase. So these ones are the go-to chemicals if these ones stop working. A lot of people in the farming world worry about resistance in weeds, in blackgrass especially. Nobody worries about the other weeds that might be in your store, the good old insects. So if you're building up resistance by just using the same chemical over and over again, it's always best to rotate with another chemical. We do rotation as a matter of course. I think we're the only company out there that does it, but then we're probably the only company that really puts a lot of thought into these sort of things. So anyway, you've got your two organophosphates here. They come in a smoke form, that's an actalic smoke, and this is Reldan 22, which is an oil-based spray-on. So this one, let's do this one first. Actalic smokes, again, pretty old school. A lot of people like using these. A lot of people use these quite a lot, and it's great if you want to get into those hard, out-of-reach places that you can't get to with a spray jet or with powered mist. But what it's not good for is just doing your entire grain store with this on its own. The problem being that it all goes up in a big puff of smoke. There's a little wick under here if you don't know this, you light it, and it's like a pyrotechnic. It absolutely flies up into the air. And it looks absolutely marvellous, which means it must be deadly, right? But the problem is there's no real residue left behind. There's a bit of a smut, which probably isn't great for food storage, and there's no real insecticidal residue left behind. When you're using each of these, they're oil-based, so they leave behind a really good layer, a really good barrier, so that if anything walks across it, it will then ingest some chemical and expire. Whereas with the actelic smokes, you'll be killing everything in its larval and adult stage, but you won't really be killing anything that is an egg, because they don't have very good nervous systems, eggs, and so there's plenty of time for the bugs to hatch out after you've treated your store, and once the smoke is gone, they're free to reinfest the store with gay abandon. So this one, great to use as a flushing agent, by the by. So if you've laid down some chemical which is a residual, if you then use an actelic smoke to flush insects out of the nooks and the crannies, good idea, moves it onto the barrier that you've left behind. Also for those hard, out-of-reach places like complicated air tunnels, this will go anywhere that air goes. So again, pretty cool. Worth pointing out, these come in different sizes, so beware the dreaded underdose, beware the dreaded overdose. Put that to one side. Reldan 22, it's a pretty cool chemical. As I say, we rotate with this one. It's the only organophosphate liquid that is left on the market to be able to treat empty structures, which is probably what makes it so cool. This one's by Dow AgroSciences, don't know if I mentioned that. And it's pretty pongy, which means a lot of people don't like using it. It does mean that people know you've been, at least. And also people have this impression that because it smells, it must be really good. I don't know where that comes from, but hey. The difference between the organophosphates and the pyrethroids, it's worth pointing out that there's a lot more active chemical in organophosphates. Let me tell you why. These ones have what you call a synergist in them, which is kind of a magic ingredient. It's called piperonal butoxide. And so when the insects absorb the insecticide, however they do it, the piperonal butoxide means that they can't then metabolize it. So even if they're being exposed to microdoses of insecticide, it builds up in their systems very quickly, and they aren't able to metabolize and excrete it. So this is sort of like death by paper cuts. Whereas this one, there's no synergist in it. It's more like being bludgeoned to death. There's just kapow, chemical. Take that. Okay, worth pointing out that if you are using this as an admixture to grain when it's going into store, there is a whopping great withdrawal period on it. So do be aware of that. Read the label read the label carefully, folks. Okay, I'll get my words out eventually. So we're left here with the pyrethroids and the pyrethrins. What's the difference, I hear you ask? God, you're all excited? Yeah, let's go. The pyrethrins, these are the organic ones. Aquapy this is made by Bayer. It's absolutely fantastic. It's water-based, and it's actually from plant sources. It's from chrysanthemums, and it's entirely natural, and it's still extremely effective, and it's actually quite cost-effective as well, because you really don't need to use a lot of it. The other cool thing about it is we've got a very expensive bit of kit called a thermal fogger, which is essentially a giant exhaust that you can pump chemical through, and it creates a very hot fog. And if you put this through it, then it can go to all of the places that the smokes can go to, and you also get a bit of residual action too. The only problem is because it's water-based, it creates more of a steam than it does a fog, so it's not particularly impressive. So we use some vegetable glycerin to go in with it. This is, if you're a healthy vapor, this is what goes into vaping cigarettes. This one's also kosher, which is important. I can't remember why we decided it's important, but I think it is. And the last two are your pyrethroids. Those are the same chemical composition as a pyrethrin, but it's not naturally derived. This is actually chemically synthesized. So you've got chaobial, which is really your go-to, the EC25. That's another Bayer product, and you've got talisma. This one's made by Arista, and they're both pretty much the same as one another. They've both got the piperonal butoxide in it. They both have the same dosage rates, the same mode of action. And the reason we use talisma rather than chaobial, this is one that most people use, but we prefer this one because if you're using it as an admixture, then this actually gives you the opportunity to double up if you're going to be spraying onto grain that has insect problems already in it. Then you can actually double your dosage rate. You have to be careful if you're flirting with the MRL, the maximum residue limit, which is the safe level set by the EU. So do just be aware of that. But it's an awesome chemical to be able to use if you want to really crack on with some bad insect problems. Preventatively, either of these are really just as good as one another. Of course, at Dealey's we like to follow everything up with pheromone traps to make sure that once you've sprayed, you've done a really good job. And yeah, that's pretty much it. We're getting geared up for pre-harvest. We hope to see you then. It's going to be 8 to 10 weeks of serious, intensive work, and there may be some fallings out. But at the moment, we're excited and lots of work going in. So happy harvesting, lots of love to everybody, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.